Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast in which I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the tabletop, RPG, and surrounding space. And this week, I'm delighted to be joined Tim van Dalen. Hello.
Hi, great to be here.
Yeah, how are we doing this fine afternoon? Again, I don't want to get. I feel weird. I always feel like I need to keep this mysterious about like when and where I'm recording these episodes.
Yeah, it is an afternoon for me. It's very sunny. I hope the sun doesn't interfere, but it's a nice sunny day here in Amsterdam.
Nice. No, I must be. Yeah, I was going to say I hadn't double checked beforehand, like where you were based and stuff like that. A little story was it? I spent 6 months in a placement in Amsterdam. Huh. Yeah, I was living over by what was it, Schiphol Airport for like a stint working around, and it was amazing, lovely, like such an amazing experience, kind of nice. Living amongst Amsterdam. But no, sorry, I just wanted to, but for the people listening, they're less curious about where I spent 6 months of my life. They're more curious about you and some of the
don't discount those 6 months. I bet the audience would love to hear about it.
Oh yeah, no, I do. There's some journeys, like I believe while I was there, it was I experienced one of like the kind of like snowstorms, which where I was based, which is literally right next to the airport versus Amsterdam Central. It was that was an ordeal of like getting home one day. It was what an adventure. But no, I personally would much rather talk about some of the interesting and cool tabletop RPG stuff that you've been making. So like,
let's do it.
Yeah, for the people listening, what have you been making?
So I guess I've mostly been making adventures. I made 2 tie-ins with Wizards hardcovers. I recently made Amulet at Watcher's Pool, which is my first OGL thing, which I'm really excited about. To directly go on a tangent there, I didn't actually think I was going to do anything OGL. I was pretty content with the guild. I like that flexibility of tying into existing lore and playing around with that and making a little thing that's a part of a bigger thing. Yeah. But then I got this opportunity to do a bundle with these other great publishers over on Drive Through RPG, and we launched that I think beginning of February, end of January, and like basically we said, okay, in a month we're going to be doing this bundle of new products. We're all going to write something just in a month, write it, produce it, everything. And that was a ton of fun as well. Yeah. So I've been getting my toes wet into the OGL space and making an adventure there, but I've been mostly focused on adventure writing, which
I must admit, it's kind of, I like the sound of that, almost like a game jam for like within like a month's space working with like OGL kind of content. Because I must admit, yeah, I think it is like for the creators, like this is a journey that I went through similarly, where I was predominantly like a DMsGuild writer, and then every now and then I would be involved with like an OGL project. And honestly, like it kind of it takes a little while to kind of get used to in terms of like what you can use, what you can't use, that kind of where the line is kind of drawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is,
but for me,
go ahead.
For me, the most fun part has been adapting it, because I really like doing something new, like challenging myself and just trying to be very broad instead of going deep on a subject. I wouldn't say I'm the best adventure writer that's out there, but I do have a pretty broad skill set, I would say, and I've really been enjoying the freedom that the OGL brings me to. I made a Roll20 conversion. I made a print version that now sells on Amazon. I made an ebook that sells over on Amazon and Kobo. I made a card deck with all of the encounters in there, and it's been really fun having the legal opportunity to do that and exploring all of that,
because again it definitely opens up like a good amount of kind of like design space. And it's funny in the same way that kind of like I think what I've mentioned before, that like adventure content is almost like when it comes to like creating content, it's the best of every world. Like you get to create monsters, you're creating scenarios, you're creating encounters, you're creating characters. It literally, you can kind of like flex a little bit, and it feels like almost like OGL adventures are almost like that next step beyond of like we can literally do all sorts of things. Like we have the freedom to like turn this like in a non-traditional format. We can, again, even on like a publishing side, on like the business side of things as well.
Yeah. There's also downsides to that, right? So I got really like I was like, okay, now I have to have a setting. I need to set this somewhere, and then I spent like a chapter fleshing that out and being really indulging myself in doing that kind of writing. Well, I probably should have been focusing on the story, on the adventure, but you get distracted.
But I think it's weird. It's kind of like it works like ebbs and flows in the sense of like working with like the DMs Guild and the Forgotten Realms and stuff like that. Sometimes like you do have the freedom to kind of work and change the lore as you kind of need to, but there's always that element of like, okay, for this particular adventure, it's building on a lot of previous events where we kind of need to have almost like a history lesson up front of saying, okay, before this adventure started, 200 years ago, two people had an argument, and that, you kind of have to go into that almost like level of detail where, I guess, having to create a whole setting from scratch just to get to the adventure is like, it's a whole kind of journey in itself. I'm curious then. So for some of the adventures you've kind of been writing then and kind of making, are these kind of concepts that kind of like stem from like your home games? Or is it the case of like you kind of see like this would be a cool kind of story to tell?
I think it's the second part for me. I think I'm pretty non-traditional in that I would say that I am more experienced as a creator at this point than as a DM. I'm relatively new even to D&D and tabletop at all. But I don't really have the drive to homebrew at the table. I really just so I have Wild Beyond the Witchlight here. That's what I'm running right now. I just take the WotC hardcovers. I run that. I don't like coming up with stories for my home game, and for some reason I do like coming up with stories for other people. So I do run I run playtests of the stuff that I write, but my main motivator is writing this stuff, making a beautiful product, and then applying that to a home game instead of the other way around. And I do envy people that are motivated by that first scenario, because I think that's a really good source of like you're testing something out, you're much more fluid, you're building something in a much more I think gradual way, which can be, I think in the end, a better end result. But I think my motivation just comes from making cool stuff. So I tend to come up with stuff, make it a product, then test it in a home game, or I try to do game nights at the office. So that's a good way to get like a lot of groups playing an adventure. So the first one I did, actually, I play tested that with 3 groups at 3 different levels. Very extensive playtesting for a first release, I think. Wow, and that was fun. That was fun to do. But yeah, I tend to come up with a product or an idea and build from there, and not take anything from my home game.
In fairness, though, I think like sometimes it is nice to kind of almost have that divide, because I think there are definitely like kind of creators where your kind of creative practices and almost like you're playing for fun. Like that's that's why we play tabletop RPGs and stuff like that. Sometimes you can kind of cross the wires, and those sessions where it's like a Friday night, you're with friends, you're still in that kind of like playtesting mode, or that kind of which I mean, for some people that is it, but it's sometimes nice
that's a good point. I definitely have a different kind of mindset when I do playtesting versus when I run for fun.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's nice to make sure you have those divides, so you can, you're not working all the time. Like this is, meant to be like, a fun hobby, kind of.
True.
But no, I think I'm kind of like in a similar boat, because sometimes I think the adventures that I kind of come up as well with, sometimes they just don't mesh with my home games. If I want to do an adventure kind of set in the Feywild right now, we're in the my one of my home games, they're in the castles, Strahd's Castle Ravenloft. I can't just like, hey guys, you want to just pop into the Feywild for like a session or two while we can take play. It just kind of messes with the flow. So there's kind of like almost like pros and cons for both. So you mentioned it. So you've got a Wild Beyond the Witchlight adventure. You've also got like a Storm King's Thunder.
That's I'm really, really proud of that one. So that grew out. I ran Storm King's Thunder, and then when we finished the campaign, I started writing that, and I actually went back and did a little time travel thing where we just slotted that in there with the original characters. So I got to really hone that in to the story as well. I really enjoyed writing for that Storm King's Thunder thing, because I had lived that campaign for I think 2 years, and I really like that setting. I really just like that sandbox they give you in chapter 3 with all of the stuff. I'm behind my screen. I'm looking at a huge printout map of the Sword Coast right there. I really loved all those locations. So what I did with Faradram's Tribal Siege, which is the Storm King's Thunder tie-in, is have a little adventure that takes place during that exploration, and that actually moves you forward from one of the story hooks, from one of the locations, does something meaningful with the larger story with the giants that's going on there, and then gives you some more leads to go on. And I think that, I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, I must admit, because it seems like with Storm King's Thunder and in kind of was it Tyranny of Dragons, both of those are kind of like Sword Coast spanning campaigns, which, so again, it's kind of nice that there is the kind of range of those adventures. But I think with those ones in particular, I think there is almost a greater need for these kind of like almost like connecting adventures. You know, because was that kind of the case that, like, as you kind of going through the campaign, this idea kind of came up as like, okay, this could be a good kind of like bridging point, and then once you kind of finish the campaign, you're like, okay, well, let's make it a thing.
Yeah, I think now that you're saying it, I think yes, but it wasn't that conscious. What I did do was, when we got to chapter 3 was when I really started leaning on the DMsGuild a lot as a DM, and getting more modules to indeed connect that. So there's this great super small product. I think it's just called MFail. It fleshes out just MFail, and there's a birthday and there's a pie eating contest, and it's all fun.
Yeah.
And I had one session where basically the party just traveled from, I don't know, I think from Waterdeep to Mirabar, and just I had all sorts of adventures along the way, and little things and just small encounters. And that was one of my favorite sessions to prepare and to run, because it was just really a great traveling story, and getting everything in there. So yeah, indeed, being that connective tissue, I think is a motivation for me in that project. Looking back, I just really enjoyed playing in that sandbox. I do get a great inspiration from having that established world and seeing everything that's going on. So one of the things I did there was in the first part of the story, without giving, well, let's give some stuff away. In the first part of the story, there's some hill giants that are motivated by the larger motivations of the Storm King's Thunder story, and they're kind of pillaging along the long road, and they're just murdering merchants, stealing stuff to get food for their chief. And that's I liked having that clear motivation that I could use to then drive that story forward. And then in the second part of the story, there's this young dragon that's seen all these giant movements as the opportunity to strike and build a reputation for itself, and kind of bring back some foresty area somewhere where civilization has gotten a little bit too far for him. And I really liked playing with those concepts within that setting. Like I knew where the story started, I knew what the world should look like when it ended, and in between there, I just had a lot of freedom to figure out some cool stuff, and kind of play around in that. And I really like that, and that those sort of constraints are often very helpful for me to boost creativity. Like obviously you can't award massive swaths of XP in something like that, because the story is still ongoing and there's milestone leveling, but you can give away some magic items and something that feels permanent on the same power level, and stuff like that has been fun for me to do. Yeah,
because I think as well, you kind of lean into a good point, because what I think something that I again, as a creative, one thing I do love about the hardcovers in particular is the fact that sometimes there are points at which they're not afraid to be like, there's a wizard tower. That's the information, the extent of the information that you get, that you can, again, for starting DMs, it is that case of like, okay, well, now I have to somehow create this whole wizard tower. It's very kind of like stressful. But this is like, I guess the things like the DMsGuild was kind of like created. It's the idea of like, you know, for those moments where you can like, I need a wizard tower. You know, chances are someone's maybe created a wizard tower perfectly for this kind of campaign, or you can go in any kind of which direction about it. I'm slightly curious then. So when you first decided
Matthew, you're cutting out for me a little bit.
Oh, am I? Sorry. I will get up on the mic a little bit more. What I was going to ask as a question is what was the drive to start making content for the DMsGuild for you?
For me, that's so I've always been motivated by making something that feels official, having something that is done, that feels polished. And that goes back even to university. When I was making papers, the way I motivated myself to do the homework and write papers was the end result of having something beautiful. And I didn't know if I fully realized what I was doing while I was doing it, but right now I have a good grasp of what motivates me, and the stuff that motivates me is figuring out stuff along the way. So I would get motivated to write a paper by figuring out how to use certain layout software and figure out a way to make it look like it belonged. And I realized that's a motivation that you don't really see often in this space, and it might even be a not so pure motivation, I think. But yeah, it is what motivates me, and it is what motivated me to make my first thing. I thought I saw those books. I came across some software that I thought, hey, I know how to use this. I can do this. I bet I could make something that looks sort of as if it belongs. And I think with the first product, I didn't super nail it. But certainly with Ferratum's Tribal Siege, there's something that I'm very proud of. And that I think if you take the Storm King's Thunder book and put my book next to it, it looks sort of like it belongs. And I'm pretty proud of that.
And I guess to peel behind the curtain as well, because I think, funnily enough, like I don't know many other people who I think you and me both, we both use LaTeX for our layout.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I've really, again, I'm like, I use it for like all my kind of like academic stuff, but I still have a hard time kind of describing what, because to type it out, it's not LaTeX, it's latex. So to try to say, oh, I use latex for my layout, it sounds dodgy on the outside, but I guess it's like it's essentially like a word processor where everything is coded. Again, there's not the same kind of is that accurate?
I think typesetting engine is the way I like to describe it. So yes, you feed it your plain text, and that can be just your text, the stuff you're writing, and it figures out a way to do the layout in kind of an optimal way. And like you said, it's mostly used in academia, and that's where I picked it up. But you have all sorts of directives you can use to influence it, and the way it looks and the way it operates, and yeah, like that. It's almost a sort of form of programming.
Yeah. What is it? So I know that Homebrewery is essentially like a user-friendly version of this, but
isn't Homebrewery really? I thought it was a markdown to HTML with a.
It might be, but I guess on like was it like myself look because I haven't used Homebrewery, but looking in, I just see the kind of similar like interfaces.
I think output is very similar.
Yeah,
but I think Homebrewery does a markdown to HTML rendering of it.
Oh, fair. But and then so it is a case of like for the way we go about doing stuff like that. I don't know. It feels like I definitely like I have my kind of core layout, and then with each kind of project, I'm kind of my source code or like my kind of base project changes with each version that I'm kind of improving, kind of realizing that, okay, maybe I need this kind of line space, or I'm kind of messing around with it. And that's kind of, for me personally, is always kind of like, if you look at like my first projects, you can kind of see the limitations of that template that I kind of used, and how gradually I've kind of like made it my own. You know, one day I was like, oh, I found out how to, which I guess sounds weird. I found out how to change colors, or like, you know, change the background and stuff like that, where I feel like it's almost I don't know why I use LaTeX in the way that I do, because again I consider myself like I'm quite good with like Photoshop and stuff like that. So something like Affinity, or you know, those kind of like not drag and drop, but
visual layouting.
Yeah, visual layout and stuff like that. Probably I would benefit from doing it, but I don't know. I've just been doing it in it's almost
for me,
like
I want that control over the source code. I want to be able to version control it. I want to see plain text diffs and stuff like that. I guess I'm too much of a software engineer to let that plain text stuff go.
And I think as well, because it does avoid some of the issues that you would have with, like, let's say, you know, like going from your like edit copy into layout and stuff like that, dealing with like you know, sometimes spelling mistakes or like things. It's a little bit harder to deal with. Whereas as both the kind of creator and, you know, I was about to call layout technician, but it kind of is that, like it turns it kind of slightly into a more like a technical skill, and I don't know if
I think it turns it into a more deterministic process, right?
Mhm.
You have something you put in, you have something you put out, and that helps me experiment as well, because I just have my version control stuff.
Yeah.
I go into the internals, I change stuff up. If I'm like, oh no, I fucked everything up, I don't know how to do it, I just reset back to the main branch and nothing's lost and everything works again.
Yeah.
And just my mind is so used to being able to do that from years of writing software that I can't imagine living without that. So I've been dabbling in design and Affinity a little bit. So I've recently gotten into print, and for the covers, like obviously they just give you an InDesign template. I drag in the image. That's fine. I'm not gonna try to recreate that in LaTeX and do everything like that. But I still really enjoy LaTeX. And like you said, I also have this, you sort of gradually level up and make it a little bit better every time. So as an example, with the last book, I learned how to use watercolor brushes in Photoshop. Or actually, I use the GIMP mostly. I have a Photoshop license, but I kind of am too used to the GIMP by now. But I figured out how to do like nice page transitions with watercolor brushes and layer masks, and that was a huge level up for the production quality of my last book. So if you look at Verratum's Tribal Siege, I have page transitions, but it was just one effect that I copied from somewhere I liked into every page. And if you start to compare them, they're pretty much the same every page. A little bit different because I sort of mirrored them in a couple
you do
of places.
like little like eye technical things like that.
Indeed, but now in the last books, you can see that it's much more natural, and I can do stuff like if there's a big tower, I can make it a little bit higher there and pull that out. So I like those little technical level ups, and I like growing like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so if we're bringing it into like, an interesting point about so working with, because obviously a lot of stuff I've been doing in terms of my layout, I've never quite taken it to print. How are you finding working with like obviously LaTeX and print? Is it the case where you now have to go through like an affinity pass now to make sure that
no, and I'm really excited about that.
Oh,
so that was a really, so I kind of at some point I resolved myself, like I'm not going to do print, I'm not going to get it to work in this process, and I can't see myself doing visual layout. I think I could do it, but I don't think I'd enjoy it. I really just like having the program that understands layout and text do that part for me, and me just tweaking it to make sure it looks good. So no, what I did was actually figure out how the PDF specs that you need to make work in LaTeX, and I found basically the right way to build up a PDF. I figured out how to do margins and bleeds and gutters and stuff like that. So that is really the fun part for me. In my latest project, I just have one version of all the code for all of the contents. I have two main files. They have a little bit of a different configuration, but they share most of it. I just compiled two files from basically the same source. One is the print version, one is the screen version. Wow. And I'm so happy about that.
I was gonna say it literally builds on what we're saying, the idea that like with each kind of project, it's almost like a technical upgrade. Like again, you kind of accrue skills that you can then kind of take off into future projects. But again, without giving anything, I don't know if we'll get too much into it about what the name of said print product is, because
we can talk about it a little bit, because you have obviously been involved in the project, in the project. So it's called Volos Vetted Vendors, and it is a book with 20 just super cool shops and shopkeepers from around the Forgotten Realms. I was going to say Sword Coast, but we have them, I think, even beyond, broader than that, which is really cool. It's just been super fun to work on. I think it fills a niche, at least for me. It's the thing I miss when it's tail. I'm horrible at like coming up with cool stuff that's for sale in a random inn just on the spot. And I think it fills that niche, and it's been super cool to work on. I've been really enjoying it. We had 10 different writers, one of them on this project. And that's been a good experience for me, just working with all sorts of different people from different backgrounds, different parts of the world, and making this one thing. And it's been really cool. So I didn't intend to bring this to print, but then I finished Amulet at Watcher's Pool, and I figured out that I could do print there. And then I was like, hey, I found this way to do it, and literally it took me, I think, 4 hours extra in layout to prepare everything for print.
Yeah.
Because it was mainly just figuring out all the images with the correct bleeds and stuff like that, and setting up the template once. And I'm not going to do that again for the next project, because in the previous project I didn't print after, and I started with A4 paper and I moved to letter paper, so I had to do all the layout again. That's something I'm gonna start all my projects in letter from now on. It hurts me very much, because A4 is obviously the superior.
You got more space. It's like
but no, for some reason a lot of printers do like letter paper much better. So
then I guess to loop back a little bit then. So with Volo, like better vendors, then obviously like being by your own admission, like doing mostly kind of like adventures and stuff like that. What was the kind of like drive of like, not only do I want to make a range of shops, I want to make it like a large scale collaboration.
Yeah, so I worked on a large scale collaboration myself. So that was Charm and Chance's Jolly John Through the Domains of Delight. Ooh, I think I got that title right the first time. Led by Sven Truckerbrot. Hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I don't think I've said his name to him out loud. And that was just a very good experience for me. I loved working with that many people in collaboration on one thing. And at that point I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I had this idea somewhere in my notebook for doing these shops for myself. I was firstly thinking of doing this myself. I had written one in one of the products that I kind of wanted to flesh out, and I saw that project and I thought, hey, this is something that I could do with more people. Just ask everyone to contribute 2 shops. I'll find 9 other writers. I'll do 2 myself, and then we'll have a nice thing. Before I knew, I was flooded with people who wanted to write about this, because apparently everyone thought this was fun, which I can't blame them. I wanted to write about it as well. And I decided to take myself off the writing team to make space for one more pitch, because everything was just so fun and I didn't know who to say no to, and that was very very hard decision.
That feels like very sort of like the idea of like, I want to write this project, and then the pitches are too good. It was like, okay, I'm happy to be involved.
Everyone was much better than me, so I just took a step back and focused on just doing the lead designing and project management and layout, which again, lead designing was super fun for me. That was really, I think I discovered that was something that I really liked, just seeing what talented people bring to the table, and then kind of nudging a little bit in areas where I think, okay, given the shared vision, maybe we can focus on this, or maybe we need to steer clear of this, and then kind of connecting everything up. I'm a sucker for Easter eggs, so we put in a ton of Easter eggs of references through other shops, and I really enjoyed that whole process.
Yeah, I was gonna say as well, because like I think, as you kind of mentioned earlier, like the idea of essentially random encounters and random shops, I always think DMs can never really have kind of enough of them. And I think there's always the moments that players love a shopping spree. I think like it's got to be unanimous. Like when you arrive at like these iconic cities, whether it's the Forgotten Realms or wherever it is and stuff like that. One, they want to find magic items. One, they just want to find weird shops and stuff like that. And yeah, I particularly do like the fact that you kind of gone the extra mile to kind of again weave in these kind of seemingly disconnected and shops and kind of build up this. I think like a Marvel cinematic universe of shops.
I like that.
Yeah. But no, yeah, I was gonna say, was it at the? Oh, geez, So what was it? So out of the 2 shops that I have, I'm trying to think about which one I kind of want to chat about a little bit more. I think I'll go with my Wondrous Exchange.
Right.
Because I must admit, I think out of like most people, I don't know if I made your life a little bit too difficult with just being kind of out there with some of the concepts.
I don't think so. I liked I think we have a good mix of stuff that's out there and stuff that's more grounded.
Yeah. But I think that's what you want. You want to have that kind of like range, because obviously shops come in every shapes and sizes. For every kind of like mundane kind of cobbler, there's like, I don't know, like a legendary figure selling wondrous items, but no, was it with what was it? I had like a concept of the shop that I was going to create wasn't necessarily a fixed location. It's like a traveling Grand Exchange, and I think immediately I was kind of thinking in terms of players work a lot with money, and sometimes by the towards the latter end of adventures, they're just swimming in gold, and at the point where they go to like I don't know, go to a place to stay, and they say it's like it's 1 silver to stay a night, and unanimously people always throw gold because they don't want to deal with any lesser denomination of currency. But I kind of playing around with the idea of okay, well, what if instead of using currency, it was like a grand exchange of goods, or potentially items of kind of meaningful kind of significance. And then that's how kind of was it Formi's serendipitous, just because I love the word serendipity, grand exchange kind of go about this genie-like figure who kind of appears in adventurers' times of need to kind of give them what they need at kind of at equal value. Which I think it was a fun kind of design challenge. I think so that's the one that I've kind of brought into the table. Out of the other, was it remaining 18? What's one that kind of you'd like to kind of again, not to give too much away about it. Obviously, we want people to pick up the product when it comes out, but
that's hard. Now you're making me pick a favorite child.
You got to pick one of 18. But that's what I mean. Hard. It's again, what's awesome in the kind of way we've kind of gone about creating them and having this kind of making connections between some of these products and stuff. It's awesome kind of seeing how unique they all are, and how there is this kind of.
I think I want to call out one that's a little bit more out there. So
I mean,
I want to talk about the octopus and the cat, which is, but the origin story there is that I had this great piece of art by Dean Spencer that I kind of threw in the chat, and I was like, hey, this looks like a great inn for whatever, or a tavern or something like that. And you can throw it on the screen if you like. I can share a screen where you can
I will do some fancy editing.
And so in this image, you see some mysterious figure exiting this tavern, and you see two people outside standing smoking and having a beer, and kind of as an afterthought, well, not as an afterthought, but there's a few cats in the image. And Sven took this image, and he came up with this story about an old lady that was touched by an otherworldly creature and became a warlock. And then when she died, her essence transferred into these cats. And now you have 7 cats that can talk, and they run an inn together, and there's eldritch tentacles everywhere, and they make octopus soup out of it. And it's such a lovely, lovely concept. Going from this image to that rich backstory, that was a really fun process. And I think part of the challenge here was that I wanted originally to try to fit most shops into a single page. That failed. Well, pretty much every shop has a full 2-page spread now, which is nice because I had a lot of place to put nice art. So we got a bunch of art. But we don't have the luxury of going over this whole backstory in pages and pages of content. So we had to reduce this whole backstory into a really small a piece of writing, and I think that came through beautifully, because you can really feel the mystery behind that, and then we have the drama, the adventure seeds of this stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and I think that worked really well. And as an example, then this shop or this tavern rather is located in Waterdeep in the Dock Ward, but then one of the other shops is this bakery hidden somewhere else in Waterdeep where there's this old widow that kind of knows everything that's going on in the area, and she's heard something about this weird octopus inn, and like one of her adventure seeds is asking the party to investigate, and it'll bring you there. So I really like weaving these things together and having these seemingly disconnected things connect, and just the whole process of building out this shop was amazing for me.
I think it's the tavern kind of gives us life. There's the cat cafes where it's a perfectly normal cafe, but there's just cats everywhere. And with the added bonus of this being a fantasy world, of course the cats talk and can serve you ale. That's just the natural progression of things.
But yeah, I love them all, and it's hard to just pick one because they're all great. I'm really proud of what we were able to do in the end. especially with the high quality of art we have, and just pieces that work beautifully with the text and the other way around.
I think as well. I think it's kind of, it's ticking all those. It always feels weird. Like it's rare that I'm chatting about a project that I'm actively kind of involved in, and I'm trying to distance myself. But I mean, in the same way that like I again, the kind of content that is most accessible to DMs is the ones that kind of provides enough for them to kind of just be able to throw it down into session without much kind of, but also again have those kind of branching adventure opportunities to potentially grow in something more. I think you can never really anticipate what as a DM your players are going to kind of gravitate towards. And just by having a range of options, you can kind of, foster a kind of what feels like an organic kind of play session of like, okay, they have gone into this, Octopus and Cat Tavern, and now they kind of want to work out what's going on with the stew. Something's clearly, and it all can kind of like evolve from there. So we don't have like a release date just yet. Obviously because now we're dealing with the monsters at print.
And there still is the global paper shortage, so I'm thinking I'm hopeful. I'm saying a month-ish. So I think we can be confident that it will be in April. But aside from that, I don't want to make any promises.
You don't want to jinx anything of like, oh, it's gonna be tomorrow, it's gonna be no, honestly, it's honestly from kind of start to finish, it has been kind of like an amazing project to be involved in. And again, I'm super appreciative of being dragged on board. And it's kind of fascinating hearing about how, again, your desire to kind of start a collaboration kind of was fostered out of being involved in like a separate kind of collaboration. Do you think running Volo's vetted vendors almost caught me with that tongue twister? Do you think that's kind of like maybe changed or broadened the types of projects you might go on to kind of make as a...
I think so. It brought me into touch with a lot of very talented writers and designers, and I'm kind of chomping at the bit to work with everyone again and do more stuff together. So I think I will still do some solo projects, because I just like being in control of the whole timeline and not being beholden to anyone about releasing or whatever. And being able to change it up, which you guys were really cool about when I midway through the project decided, hey, let's maybe do print and add like a couple of months to the expected release date. So you're really cool about that.
Well, I mean, again, it's always that payoff of like, it's so nice being able to hold your words in person. It's always going to be worth the wait.
Indeed. But so I still like doing solo stuff, but I think I will do more collaboration stuff. I think so this is still on the down low, but there will be a follow-up to Volos vetted vendors. After that, I think I will it will take me a while to do collaborations on this scale again, just to settle down a little bit and not have to worry about so many moving parts. It has been really fun, but it also has been challenging.
I think all of that. It's kind of natural to always have like a group project, then one for yourself, a group project, just to kind of like have that equilibrium of like, nice, I could work with myself, and then by the time that you've done, like, I guess it's the case of like, by the time you've done with a project that just you're working on, you're kind of needing the kind of like someone else to kind of come in and help you and stuff like that. And then after a project of working with a bunch of people, as great as can go, sometimes it's like nice to just be me by myself for a bit, and then that's the cycle that you continue for forevermore. Well, you bring up an interesting point then, because so talk about not only just project management, but just adventure writing and just everything that you've kind of done. What would you say is like stands out to you as your favorite part and like your least favorite part of the overall process?
So let's start with least favorite part. So right now I'm fighting calling this project done, because for print there's a certain finality in it. Even though we're doing print on demand, you would still need to reorder a proof, and the project is down in the meantime. So there's kind of a finality to saying yes, this is done, and that's what I'm going up against right now. So let's call that the least favorite part. For favorite part, I think it's seeing it come together. that moment where it goes from an idea to something that is starting to take form in a book shape. So like I said earlier, I'm really motivated by seeing it be a finished thing.
Yeah.
So if I have a couple of pages that look really good and look like they're finished, I just get a lot of energy out of that. And I know that's also a potential downfall for me, because I get like I go into layout way too early. I see a nice piece of art I like, I throw it on a page, and then I'm kind of already set there, while I should have kept it open for when all of the text is there and everything is edited. And I should have kept it free, but yeah, I kind of go into that mode of, hey, yeah, I want to finish this. Oh, it looks so good.
I think that there's always a point of like creatives where, and depending on different stage of project, sometimes you can be done with a project and the project isn't necessarily done. So like in the same way of like, as what was it, when you finish your first draft, mentally it can sometimes feel like I've done the first draft as a fact. Then you have to respond to edits, and then it kind of goes on like that. And the same with was it like print? The document has to be complete in order to even like get a print, like to get like a test print. So I can imagine with this project, it's like it's done. We could release it now and stuff like that. And then once you get the print back, touch wood, there's nothing wrong with it. But if there is any minor tweaks that you need to make, then it's not done suddenly, and your brain has for the longest time has been like, I'm done with it. Yeah, it's I don't really know how you get around that. I think it's just and yeah, particularly in your case, where again it is nice when everything kind of just falls into place. The sometimes as well, I don't know whether this is fact that because we use like LaTeX. Sometimes getting an image in the right spot is like fighting. Like you have to go like, it's like, no, I want it. No. Then when it kind of like Lego piece, it just slots into place. It's like, I'm done.
Indeed.
I don't have to touch this page ever again.
And then, but then it's so great because it's just plain text, and I never have to worry about like in Word moving an image and everything else shifts again. So that's the good part there. But yeah, it can be a bit of a battle every once in a while.
Like that, I mean, what is it? Regardless of what you use, there's always going to be, the benefits and drawbacks. But I guess to kind of smooth on. What am I saying? To elegantly move on to my next question. What over some of the stuff that you've done? Then I'm curious if there's been something that kind of still stands out to you as like a design choice that you're quite kind of proud of, whether it's something more recent or maybe it's like something you look back and go, no, I kind of got it right then.
Yeah. So the jury's still out on this one, but with Volos vetted vendors, I really tried to focus on usability at the table, like being able to leaf through it, pick a shop. Your players said at the end of last session they want to move to a city. You pick one you like, you put it in there. You don't have to modify too much. So I think we accomplished that. And if we did, I'm very proud of that. But to pick something that I think worked out in Shrine to Talos, which was released with Witchlight and is a Feywild thing. Took a gamble there. The connect with the adventure is a little bit less than I was hoping for. I thought I was going to do a hardcover tie-in, release it at the same time.
Okay, so it was almost like preemptive in the.
It was preemptive, yeah. The theme doesn't super fit, but it's still a nice Feywild thing you can throw in there.
Yeah.
But it did a skill challenge there, which I think worked out well. I hadn't really used those a lot before, and I think that worked out well. Another thing I'm pretty proud of is in Theratrum's Tribal Siege for the final sort of boss battle with the titular dragon. I have this tactics description, which I think I find very helpful when I'm running things, because I don't have to think about how monsters react. And obviously you have this great series about how the monsters aren't stupid.
Yeah, and as you say, the monsters know what they're doing.
Yeah, the monsters know what they're doing. About running all that stuff. But like I said, I don't see myself as a super great DM, so I just love having that in the adventure ready for me. So that's how I tend to write these things. I just want to the stuff I would want to know when I DM it. I try to write that down.
I think as well. I mean, there's always ebbs and flows and stuff like that in terms of like, I think for when it comes to like adventures and stuff like that, the adventure itself, like the core content, should be as accessible to as pick up as go as can possible and stuff like that. You can have kind of like, like a sprawling kind of like optional quests and things that kind of branch off and give but the main through line of of the adventure, it should be like that. There shouldn't be ever a point of like, okay, how am I supposed to run these 7 harpies in this weird wind tunnel thing that what have you kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense. And again, I'm always very kind of fascinated about the process of trying to release something kind of almost concurrently with like a hardcover. So in kind of, what was it? Was it Talos's ritual? Shrine of Talos.
Shrine of Talos, yeah.
Shrine to how did you kind of navigate the kind of writing adventure, having a rough idea of which like hardcover was gonna go, but not.
Yeah, so the process there was I was on holiday last summer, and I decided for myself, okay, when I get back, there's 2 weeks until Witchlight releases.
Okay,
and I'm just gonna try to. So on holiday, I came up with the plot, like the overarching plot, and a little bit of the stuff around that. And then when I get back, I just spent a whole weekend writing it, and then the next week playtesting it, editing it, fixing it up, and then basically it was already time for release. So I think what I tried to do was I looked at the level range for the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I knew it was set in the Feywild. I picked a level that I thought was appropriate for some Feywild travel thing, and then I just tried to go with Feywild tropes to fill it with. And in the end, I think I didn't super nail it because I missed the whimsical theme of the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which obviously is a very big theme in the adventure, but didn't super come through to me before it was released, and probably that's on me. But
I mean, the Feywild is that kind of nebulous, like, again, on one end of the spectrum, you have the kind of like fairy tale, whimsical nature, but Feywild, like Fey and Chair, it does get pretty dark.
Yeah, so I lean more into the dark side of that, and I had a hag encounter in there, which is very Fey, but it's also maybe a little bit harder to explain, like why there's a random hag in your Witchlight campaign that's not part of the Hourglass Coven. And so in that sense, I still think it's a very good Feywild adventure, but it didn't hit quite the Wild Beyond the Witchlight tie-in mark that I was going for.
It's interesting kind of hearing almost like the kind of like design challenges, like, again, right towards like the start of the chat, you're talking about like, the OGL content you're making, having that kind of like time span restriction of like, let's make this within a month. Trying to Talos being, let's make this within kind of like 2 weeks and stuff like that. Would you say that sometimes that kind of like that restriction kind of helps your creativity, stuff like that?
For sure. Yeah. I really get very motivated by constraints, whether they're time or something else. I really do. I have this deck of cards that all have a constraint on them. They're geared towards web dev, but the concept holds. It's the idea that if you have a set of constraints, your brain goes into problem solving mode, and you're much more able to go like deep creatively and think of solutions rather than starting on a blank canvas. And I think I liked doing it that way, and kind of figuring out like how am I going to do this? Can I do this? Obviously, I had a pretty good idea that I could do it, and I had the time to do it in advance. And it was just me. I was doing layout, I was doing art direction, I was doing the writing, I was doing the rewriting, I was doing layout, everything. So I knew, and cartography a little bit. I knew what I had to do, and I thought, yeah, I can get that done, and I did. And I even had some time to play test it, which was fortunate because I did catch some balancing stuff in the in the battle at the end. So I liked doing it that way. I definitely wouldn't want to be in that rush mode all the time. I like a lot of people have the intention of doing this full time, or at least for a set amount of hours each month, and kind of have income of that, and do it as a main thing. I do like my day job, so I'm not looking to go full time on TTRPG creation. so I like to pick my projects that I do on the side, and I like to know that I can give the focus to them that they deserve.
Yeah.
And I think I do that. But I also don't want to be in this ultra rush mode every time.
No,
and
yeah.
crank it
Sometimes
out.
it's nice to kind of like have that kind of like catch lightning in a bottle, kind of like feel that mad. Like again, this is why I enjoy doing like game jams every now and then, because it is that kind of like restriction in so many different spaces in terms of like, you know, ideas, timing. You know, it's full-time crunch. It probably isn't indicative of creativity in any way, shape, or form. You'll burn out. That's just what's going to happen. That's why you can dip your toes in every now and then. So I'm curious then, would you say that like the shrine, like the process of going through like Shrine to Talos was kind of like taught a lesson that you kind of like passed on, or has there been maybe like a more iconic lesson that you've kind of learned in your journey that you would, you know, go back and tell your like past self to be like, hey, you should do X?
Oh, that's a really tough question. So I think the approach I've been taking is really taking it step by step and taking something that I know I'll be able to do and adding a little bit onto it and adding a challenge there. So I haven't run into any really big things. One thing that I did assume right at the start, I guess that I didn't think that marketing was going to be as big as a deal as it turned out to be, which is, I think, an experience that a lot of people have. Funnily enough, I thought this would be a nice break from all the marketing I have to do in my day job, which it was not. And I learned, I guess I learned that quickly enough. I don't know if I would have wanted to learn that lesson earlier, because maybe I just wouldn't have started the process. But I was looking at the guild and I thought, here's this platform that people can put stuff on. There is promotion built in. There's going to be some organic reach. And I think for my first project, Trouble in Wheeldom, there was. That's a pay what you want. It still gets a lot of traction like that. But then when I released for Atom's Tribal Siege, I saw that paid products get way less traction. And I was kind of lost at like, did I do something wrong? And the thing I did wrong was not do any outside promotion and not have any sort of audience. And that's something that I have been correcting ever since, and it's still not the part of it that I enjoy the most, and I can see that in like since, let's say, October, I've been really in creating mode, where I finished Amulet at Watcher Spool, and I've been working on Volos vetted vendors, and I can see my sales drop off because I haven't been in marketing mode, and I need to get better at alternating that.
I mean, I guess it's, I think, was it I always kind of said that unfortunately when it comes to like marketing, you're never really done. It's I guess, and the kind of completionist way that I'm kind of minded and stuff like that is, once I finish the project, I know I have marketing as part of, like, you know, maybe the 2 weeks after release, and then in the third week the project's probably dead to me in the nicest sense of the term. You know, but there's nothing stopping you, you know, kind of having that repeated, like, even
I've actually found that it doesn't really matter when a project released. You can just go out in the world and exclaim about it and tell people about it, and it'll move units eventually. And I think that's a fun thing. Like, you know that at any point you can boost sales by just putting this work in, but on the other hand, like you said, you're never finished and there is no done.
Yeah, I think as well. Sometimes, like, particularly when it comes like to project release and stuff like that, sometimes you can kind of almost like ride a wave and kind of have that kind of momentum coming out of the gate and stuff like that, which but it ebbs and flows. It's fickle. Like, I won't pretend to know the ins and outs of just because sometimes it feels like, depending on the time of day and whether or not Twitter likes me, if I've sacrificed enough, I don't know, internet points to Twitter, I might get, you know, a semi-viral tweet. If not, I'll get 3 likes, and that's good enough.
Yep.
So then I guess to kind of like round things off then, Tim, to kind of just chat about having that I guess, you know, that part in your kind of create process where getting involved in collaborations and now running kind of collaborations yourself. Have there been, I guess, like figures within the tabletop RPG, like, you know, community as a whole that are like points of inspiration for you?
Yes. So many. Let me just pick out one, otherwise we're going to be here for a long time. So I really enjoy Empty Black's adventure writing, and he has been a a great inspiration for me when I was writing my first stuff, and he still is. And I'm actually lucky enough to get to exchange ideas with him on a regular basis now, and I really enjoy that. But no, I think he has such a great way of presenting information and a good mix of box text and read aloud stuff and puzzles and ways to discover. I really enjoy all of his adventures that I've run as a DM or that I've just read. And I recently read his book on adventure writing, which had a lot of great tips in it. So yeah, Empty Black is definitely someone I look up to.
Yeah, was it? I don't know, little known fact, but was it the cover for his How to Write Adventure Books?
Indeed, you made that. Yeah, I knew that. I knew that.
It'll come around full circle.
I knew that, indeed. So I've been meaning to ask you, did you also draw the dragon icon that appears in the chapters?
I don't know. I if it's the icon on the front, I
yes,
believe that,
it is.
yeah, so there's a fantastic toolkit of game icons, which is a whole database of free kind of icons and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff on the covers, it's yeah. So I know. Although I don't know, I might have. Honestly, it's so long ago. I will assume that I didn't do it because I don't want to take credit for something that's mine. I might have made it. It's plausible. Just because I
indeed. I realized that when I was reading it, I recognized the style of the cover as well. But yeah, I totally.
No, like I said, I mean, was it? It's a relatively small industry in the grand. It seems big, but yeah, chances are we've all kind of, it's like, was it two? What's that film game where you talk about like two actors and they're always like two films apart of like who they've been in
6
alongside.
Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's that. Yeah, I should have remembered that. But yeah, it's the same thing, just with the DMsGuild.
Yeah.
No, awesome. Yeah, no, 100%. And I think particularly when you look at like people like Empty Black or anyone who's kind of been for literally creating content for as long as they have, you can see how not only from their most up to date things, when they're open enough to kind of talk about their process and stuff like that, you learn so much because each product they do is kind of an embodiment of all the previous lessons they've learned across their journey. And yeah, again, it's kind of nice to be able to almost like skip a few steps by not having to learn things the hard way of being like, oh yeah, no, I shouldn't put the entire adventure behind one skill check. I should probably have some maybe other avenues to kind of explore things through. Well, Tim, looking at the time, we've done it. But I don't want to leave without hearing. Obviously, we know we've got Volo vetted vendors on the horizon. I'm just curious if there's anything else that you're currently working on, and more importantly, where can people kind of stay up to date with all your work?
Yeah. So the other stuff I'm working on is still under wraps. Yeah. So I'm gonna keep the focus on Volos. People can find me at rpg.timvdalen.nl. Which we should probably write.
There'll be a link to that in the description as well. So yeah,
perfect. Which is basically just a portfolio site. You can sign up for my email list. I'm not super active there, so I definitely won't spam you. But we've got some cool stuff coming up, and I think when this releases, we'll have a marketing site up for Volos vetted vendors as well, where you can sign up to win a free print copy on release. So I'm excited about that.
I think like with it, even if it like we get that link just afterwards, it'll be in the description for people listening a year down the line.
Perfect.
They can find this website and all that good stuff.
Perfect.
No, exactly. Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. I must admit, it's always like fun hearing about like the things like I've got stuff I'm working on, can't quite talk about them, because then in the future you're like, that's what they were on about. Oh my god, that's nice. Well, no, awesome, Tim. I can't thank you enough for spending some of your.
It was fun.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
It's been delightful. And other than that, I've been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes on Twitter. Where I have some things coming out soon. Again, it's a case where I don't know when this is fully going to come out. I'm just keep tight-lipped on it. But we come to the final and arguably my favorite question, which is Tim, how do you end a podcast?
Yeah, so my mind goes to Smashing like buttons, stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, dude. I feel like I'm gonna feed in like an air horn sound of like smack that like button, hit subscribe, be sure to.
So that's where my mind went.
Yeah. That's so. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button. Smash that subscribe button. Go tell your grandma about the Dungeon Masters Guildhouse podcast. Go on. Then.
Awesome.